You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
What is going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network, our city, our network, LAFBnetwork.com. Make sure to like and subscribe to the show, the LA Football Show, or you search Believe in LA Football wherever you get your podcast. Of course, the website, like I just mentioned, LAFBnetwork.com, and on YouTube, main channel, LAFB Network, or we have 4 team-specific channels. This one is our Chargers show, so you would search Chargers, LAFB, to find us. And what a Sunday night thriller it was at SoFi with the Chargers knocking down the Dolphins 23-17 in arguably an absolute must-win game. Excited to get into it. Joining me, as always, the great Jamal Madney. What is up, my brother? How we doing?
Doing well, Rye. Really excited to be talking about the Chargers' emphatic victory going into this week and all the excitement of playoff possibilities. It's always so fun to talk with you, even more so off of a big victory. So excited to get into it.
Yes, I missed you end of last week. Little vacay. Do you feel refreshed, rejuvenated? How are you feeling after the weekend?
Yeah, little vacay with the wife, Ryan. We were out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is one of my just most favorite places on earth. I'm a big Wyoming, Montana guy. My dream is to have a winter getaway home in one of those two spots. It was really glorious. Had an opportunity to do a little bit of wildlife excursions, some stargazing. Just an incredible atmosphere out there with the snow. You know, having been born and raised in Los Angeles, I don't get very much exposure to snow on a consistent basis, and having so many family and friends who are in Los Angeles as well. So I have to get my snow fix, my Christmas hits somewhere else. And Jackson is starting to become that place for us. So it was a wonderful weekend and excited to be back.
Love it. Well-deserved, well-traveled. You were in Vegas with me 2 weekends ago, and then Jackson Hole. So I'm curious to see where you're going to end up, next weekend or throughout the rest of the year.
Right. So, I think we're going to be planted firmly here in LA at home and just kind of spending time with friends and family for the holidays. And I think that just sounds glorious to me.
Well, there you go. Well, hey, maybe Dallas at the end of the year for the Cotton Bowl. Who knows? Who knows? Just putting it out there for one last final New Year's Eve hurrah, and hopefully our Trojans can beat the Tulane Waves out there in Dallas. But that's for another show. This is the Charger Show, brought to you as always by our friends at Bet Online. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. You get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Jamal, I won some money on that French-England World Cup game, actually. I bet 3 bets. Almost won all 3. I bet France would win the first half, which they did, 1-0. Bet France would win the game outright, which they did 2-1. And I bet final score would be 3-1, which was a huge payout. And they just missed getting that third goal. I was definitely nervous when Harry Kane had that penalty option. He missed it. I was like, it's destiny. France going to get the third goal. I'm going to do this big payout. But anyway, you can do that all at betonline.ag, mobile or desktop. Promo code BELIEVE. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So, Jamal, Chargers 23, Dolphins 17. It really wasn't that close as the score indicated. I thought the Chargers dominated on all 3 phases, really. Still left some to be desired on offense in terms of just point total, but the yardage was there. They moved the ball, the creativity. Herbert's play was there. They got the running game going late in the game when they needed it. But your initial thoughts from this, really, really historic win, in my opinion, for this Staley Chargers team because of the injuries mounted and the way these guys came out in prime time and played. And really the world kind of took notice of this team last night. What were your thoughts initially?
Yeah, Ryan, I think I want to pick it up right where you left off. And I believe this was the greatest victory of the Staley era. If we really break this down, this was the Chargers' first win this year against a team with a record above 500. Herbert had a career-high 39 completions en route to 39 for 51 for 367 yards. They just, given the situation of being 6-6 and having to battle for a playoff spot, against a team that was 2 games ahead of them in the standings coming in. All of these comparisons between Herbert and Tua over the last several weeks. I just think for all of these reasons, it was the best win in the Chargers this season and in the Staley era. And when you think about how potent this Dolphins offense was going into this game, for this Chargers defense to hold that team to 219 total yards and essentially gave up one play the whole game, which was that 60-yard pass to Tyreek Hill. The other big play was on a bust, that fumble recovery, and Hill almost looked like a rugby player, where that's how you run out of a rugby scrum. You sort of come around and then, go all the way. It was just such a non-traditional play. But to essentially hold Tua to 10 for 28, Ryan, 36% completion on 145 yards, held the running game in check to only 92 yards. They were absolutely sensational, and you said it best. It was 23-17, but really never felt that close. It always felt like, could the Dolphins just hang in there long enough to maybe steal the game at the end? But this was played on the Chargers' terms through and through. And if it wasn't for a couple of failed fourth down conversions in some scoring opportunities, this thing could have been a much greater margin of victory. So seeing Mike Williams, seeing Keenan Allen with Ekeler, I think that was the big takeaway for me. All 3 of those guys were significant as receiving options 1, 2, and 3. Obviously, we mentioned the 39 completions from Herbert, but he was 10 of 11 on all designed rollouts last night. Ryan was absolutely tremendous in that capability. And so we finally got to see this Chargers offense as healthy as they've been. And the results have been absolutely terrific. 7-6 now. I still believe a 3-1 finish is very much in the cards. And if they do that, they'll be in the playoffs. A little bit of scoreboard watching tonight with that Patriots-Cardinals Monday night game. If the Patriots win, they do temporarily take that last spot from the Chargers. But all these teams, Patriots, Jets, Chargers, all 7-6. So much to be excited about moving forward, but a resounding victory, a very impressive one. And for at least 1 week, hopefully folks can cool about Staley, about Lombardi, about Herbert, about just all of the doomsday scenarios that comes with being a Chargers fan.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see. Hopefully it lasts an entire week. Let's hope. We'll see if we're lucky. But yeah, I want to start with the defense, Jamal, just because this obviously has been a unit that, has been highly criticized, and rightfully so, being Staley, being a defensive guy, getting this job because of what he did, in Vic Fangio's system. And then in year 1 as the defensive coordinator with the number 1 defense in the Rams, comes over here, and the defense just has not at all lived up the expectations. Really has, it's been a bottom defense the 2 years. And last year it was kind of like, all right, benefit of the doubt, wasn't his guys. He was installing not only a new defense, but they're installing a new offense, new special teams. He's now the head man that he has to focus on a number of different things. So kind of get the benefit of the doubt there. Then they go out this year. They add all these different pieces to kind of help actually, entertain the style of defense, the scheme that he wants to run. And, a realist, a person that can sit here and not be doomsday, understands the importance of the injuries that have happened. However, even with the injuries, there's been a lack of consistency with, this team, obviously, but specifically the defense, specifically the running defense. And so for them to come into this game with even more injuries on defense, missing Sebastian Joseph Day and Derwin James and Bryce Callahan, missing those 3 altogether, obviously with the already Joey Bosa and Austin Johnson and all those others, you add those 3 and you see not only a stout defensive performance that essentially gave up 14 points on 2 fluke plays. The second touchdown wasn't a fluke play. It was a great ball by Tua, but Mike Davis was step for step with Tyreek Hill and then just fell as the ball came down. So great play from the Dolphins, but it was 1 deep pass there. The rugby fumble recovery that the Chargers forced a fumble, looked like they may have even had the ball or at least stopped it, and then it just gets shoved out right to, of course, the fastest man on the planet. So 2 essentially luck, fluke, whatever you want to call it, plays. This defense held the Dolphins to 3 points. And we're not just held to 3 points, we're dominant. It wasn't the Chargers defenses we've seen in the past where maybe they give up a lot of yards, but they kind of, when it counts, they cinch down, they hold them in the red zone. They were dominant, Jamal. Like the pass rush was getting home. Kyle Van Noy got his first sack as a Charger finally. Khalil Mack didn't really show up a lot statistically, but definitely his presence was felt. And the greatest of this defense that we saw was that secondary, which was shocking considering no Derwin James, no Bryce Callahan, no Nasir Adderley. So you have Alohi Gilman, Alohi Gilman in the back end stepping in. He played phenomenal. Mike Davis played phenomenal. Asante Samuel Jr. played phenomenal. So it's just a combination of things that I think we've been saying a lot of. It's the scheme, in my opinion, and we've said this a lot, the scheme on defense has been sound. The execution has not. And so we finally saw last night in prime time where the scheme and the execution finally met head on, and you could see what a beautiful thing this could be and what this talent level, when everyone comes back, the potency can actually be. And I think what you've been saying a lot, Jamal, that I've obviously agree with, but I want to really double down on that is you've never really seen this team like truly believe that they had the right pieces, the leadership, whatever you want to call it. There was just not this sense of belief. There was basically like, all right, Herbert, go out and win us these games. And we've talked about that a lot. Like, is he there yet? Is he not? Blah, blah, blah. It's a different conversation. Obviously, dude's elite, showed last night how good he can be. But there wasn't that true belief. And last night, Jamal, was one of the first times this season where you saw it not only because of the execution and saying, like, if I just do my job, like, we're going to do special things. And they did. Like, we saw Mike Davis play the best ball I think we've seen him play since his contract extension. We saw Sammy Sentinel Jr. play the best ball he's played since being drafted out of Florida State. We saw Alohi Gilman probably just earn the starting job the rest of the season on the back end. We saw linebackers. Kenneth Murray played much, much better. Obviously, Drew Tranquil's been trending anyway in the right direction, but he played great. And so we saw the buy-in finally, like, truly step in. And the fact they were down that many guys and still shut down a top 5 offense, a trending offense that everyone's slobbering over, and they made him look foolish. Like that to me, yeah, we're going to get to Herbert here in a minute. We're going to get to the offense. We're going to get to all those good things as well, because I thought from top to bottom it was just a great game. But the storyline is the defense and how they balled out and played. And if they can play like that week in and week out, I know this team's 7-6, but this is now, again, a Super Bowl contender. If the defense can play like that week in and week out, I thought it was a special, special night. And I'm just very happy for those guys and for Coach Staley finally showing what his brain sees when the players execute correctly.
I couldn't agree more, Ryan. And, it's so interesting. A couple things there. With the NFL, when you think you know, that's when you don't know. And Going in, who would have thought with these injuries being what they were on the defensive side, you mentioned all of them. These are big names, Ryan. Derwin James, Bosa, Callahan moving forward. And to have that lack of quote-unquote star power on the defensive side, really in sort of all 3 levels of the defense, and to shut down arguably one of, if not the most explosive in terms of big playability offenses in the entire NFL is absolutely staggering. And I think the second piece, Ryan, for me is where you and I have continued to have this discussion about the scheme has been right, the culture has been right. We need to see more of that nasty. We need to see more of that physicality. We need to see more sound technique in terms of being in the right spots, in terms of tackling, in terms of good situational and positional football. And that's what we saw for the first time yesterday. I couldn't agree with you more. It really felt like a culture-defining win for this team moving forward. I know there was a lot of conversation about that win against the Cardinals being the turning point. To me, last night, if there's going to be a turning point in this season, it was last night, and it was because of this defense. And there's one other thing here, Ryan, and I want to be careful with how I say this. The margin for error in terms of and drop-off from a first string to a second string in the NFL is just not that much. And so when you actually I think a lot of the conversation around injuries and fans complaining about injuries is so overblown and is so unnecessary, because the talent discrepancy in the NFL is so small across teams and within a team. That's what makes this league so special. That's why there's so much parity in this league. And that's why it's so hard to predict week over week what's really going to happen in this league. Obviously, you have the Derwin James level caliber talent. You have the Joey Bosa level caliber of talent. But after that, Ryan, a lot of these injuries are just flat out excuses. And we saw that last night where if you take out an Aaron Donald or a Joey Bosa or a Nick Bosa or folks of that caliber, yes, you're going to feel it. But there's maybe 20, 25 guys in the NFL that are of that caliber on the defensive side. Everyone else is very close to each other in terms of talent. You and I have kind of talked about in the college game, hey, the difference between a 5-star and a 4-star is so nebulous sometimes. And in the NFL, everybody's 5-star because they made it to the NFL. And so while there's so much fun and conversation around injuries, last night shows that as long as you have credible NFL players, but they are prepared and you have the right scheme, you can be very, very successful. And I just want to echo your sentiments. Very happy for Coach Staley and very happy for this Chargers team and how emphatic they showed what they could do. You know, Ryan, earlier in this season when this team lost to Jacksonville, and even when this team beat Denver, there was so much, for me, it was, especially after that Denver game, yeah, they won. I can't really think of them credibly as a Super Bowl threat anymore. Last night is the first time since that game where I believe if this team is pitching their fastball, they can compete with the likes of the Chiefs and the Bills and the Bengals and the Ravens for AFC supremacy. And so this is such a monumental win in that regard. And I think that's why we can see what this team is capable of. And I think it's important to look forward. And I think we have to let some of this injury talk go away a little bit. Obviously, Derwin, Bosa, some of these other guys need to come back. But after that, I think that it really comes down to scheme and execution.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. We've talked about it a lot. I think where, and this is what you're exactly saying, the difficulties, I should say, with this Chargers team is their top tier, like above everyone else, all went out at the same time. And that's where, like, when you lose Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, like if you lose one, I think you can make up for it. Yeah, we saw how important Mike Williams is. We saw how important Keenan Allen is. But as long as you have one on the field, you have options. Other guys can slide in. When they were missing both for multiple weeks, that's where you saw a huge drop off. When you lose both Joey Bosa and Derwin James, that's a huge thing. But yeah, when you look at, we'll just talk Chargers specifically. When you look at, you know, the 22 starters on offensive defense, probably 15 to 16 are like next man up. And then you have your 5 to 6, your Herbert, Derwin, Joey, Keenan, and Mike that are probably like fairly irreplaceable. So everything you're saying, completely agree. I've talked a lot about with coaching. I think there's 2 to 3 elite coaches. There's 2 to 5 probably bad coaches, and everyone else is pretty damn like just dependent on their players. And they're like, you know, how are they rah-rah? How are they culture? But there's not a finite difference between coach 5 and coach 20. Like, it's what players do you have and stuff like that. So I think it goes all levels when you look at coaching, players, staff, and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people, and you know, you can blame us. I guess we're considered the media, or just the over. I don't think we're the same as media, but a lot of people just buy into the stuff the media is spewing because that's what they've been hearing. And just on that note, this is off topic, but one thing I've learned, Jamal, now, and you've been around it too, but this is not directed at anyone in particular. And I've met a lot of amazing media people in now our time of being credentialed, being at, you know, Super Bowl events, being, you know, at Pac-12 title game, being at USC games all year, being at Rams, all these different events, which is amazing. But one thing I've learned is probably 80% of, and this is just football talking, but I'm sure that all sports are the same, 80, maybe even higher, 90% of football media are extremely old school. Like the amount of times I have to hear crap of people that when teams go for it on 4th down, and the old 60-year-old media guys like, just take the points. What are you doing? I'm like, okay. I mean, that's your opinion, but you clearly are thinking old school and don't know. So the media is old school. Also, football media that I've encountered, again, no one specifically, but have a very entitled mentality and think they know everything about the sport because they've covered the sport for 40 years. But like I just mentioned, haven't really adapted to the new sport and like think they know all this. So when they are writing these things, saying these things. And you see with ex-players too. And I have all the respect in the world for ex-players. Obviously, they played, we didn't. But they act like they know every little detail about everything. When it's like, well, now you're just a talking head too. And the one thing I always take away from talking to players, and I can't remember if this was Frosty, my good friend Frosty Rucker, or someone I met through him. But he basically said that, look, players obviously know the game, but in reality, outside of quarterback and outside of probably the center, like, you know your position. Like Frost, I think it was Frosty. I feel bad, but I'm pretty sure. But Frosty's like, look, I knew the ins and outs of playing defensive end. I didn't know F about running back. I didn't know F about corner. I didn't know my job was defensive end, rush the quarterback, seal the edge. That was my job every single day. So when you see all these ex-players that are acting like they know everything ins and outs of the game, some of them have studied sense. Some of them, whether it be a center or a quarterback, probably do know. But a lot of them, they don't know more than what we do. So I think people will hear what they say and it's like, okay, that's put it in stone. That's the way it is. And you have to kind of start thinking for yourself, watching for yourself. And so that's kind of what we're saying. We're talking about the injuries and stuff like this, the scheme and all this and that, and different things that I think have contributed to this Chargers team where they're at, and why I think, they're in a good spot moving forward. And I agree with you. This is the best I felt about this team. And here's the exciting thing, Jamal, and then I want to touch on the offense, then we can wrap up. Here we are, 4 weeks left, 4 games left. They have the Titans next week, and they have, obviously, any given Sunday, but they have very winnable final 3 games with the Rams, the Broncos, and the Colts. So they could potentially win out, finish this thing 11-6, or even if they drop one, finish 10-6, which we think gets them in. But the more exciting thing about that, and just today in Staley's press conference, Joey Bosa, day-to-day. He could come back this week. At this point, I think they almost hold him out, let him be fully healthy because they're going to go on this run. There's a chance Rashawn Slater comes back, which no one expected. Now they're saying, yeah, he has a shot to come back. Obviously, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are getting more and more healthy. Obviously, Derwin James and Bryce Callahan is a week-to-week thing, so they'll be back. So there's a chance, as long as this team doesn't have a Houston Texans meltdown like they did last year, where they're going to go into the playoffs the healthiest they've been since training camp started in August and playing their best football. And so that is why this team deserves a lot of credit for weathering that storm, staying together. And now they may go into the playoffs, the healthiest team in football, the most feared team in football. And I don't know. It's exciting, Jamal. Obviously, this is 1 week. It's great. But just looking to the future, it's like everything's ahead of this team now. And so no more excuses. Let's see them continue this dominance and become that Josh Allen Bills, become that Pat Mahomes Chiefs. Because remember, I'm rambling now. Pat Mahomes had 3 picks yesterday against the Broncos. They almost blew that game in Denver. If Russell Wilson didn't go out, they may have lost that game. The Chiefs look fairly beatable, which a lot of people don't think. So definitely a right time for this Chargers team to get right, get healthy heading into this final 4-week stretch.
No question, Ryan. And I think you hit on a couple of big points here. They can be the healthiest they've been. They can have the most rhythm that they've ever had and build that requisite momentum if they can win out to avoid, we're talking about them getting into the playoffs, but they're hovering in that 7 seed, the 6 seed. Hey, if they can go on a run and become a 4 seed, now you avoid a Bills in the first round or a Chiefs in the first round or a Bengals in the first round. And now you have a more winnable game in the first round and you can build even more momentum. And how many times have we seen teams go on these late runs? Think of the Giants. Think of the Ravens. These teams that won their last 4 or 5 games of the season, got hot at the right time, and really were able to propel themselves into a deep run. That is the recipe in the NFL. It's about being healthy. The Bengals last year, but being healthy at the right time, playing your best football at the right time. The Chargers have it, right? And here's the other piece. The Chargers, for all of, and this is where I want the fan base to sort of get away from a deficit mindset a little bit, is for all of the challenges that this team has had due to injuries this year, and a staggering amount it has been, where it has been made up for a little bit has been in the schedule. If you look at this Chargers schedule this year, it's one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. When you think about, obviously they've had to play the Chiefs and they've had to play the Niners, but they haven't had to play the Bills. They haven't had to play the Bengals. They haven't had to play the Ravens. They haven't had to play these tough teams. They haven't had to play the Eagles. They haven't had to play the Vikings. They haven't had to play the Cowboys. When you look at the top 7, 8, 9 teams in the NFL, the Chargers have basically avoided 85 to 90% of those teams. They've avoided about 90% of the top third of the league. So even though they've been really injured, the scheduling gods have given them an incredible break here, where not only has their first 13 games been soft, the last 4 games are pretty soft as well. And really, it's just that Titans game and then beyond. So again, this opportunity doesn't always present itself in that way, where there's an opportunity to really build this momentum going into the playoffs. So much to be excited about for Chargers fans. But I think we can collectively say, look, it's been a tough hand in terms of injuries, but schedule has been very favorable, and now the opportunity to get healthy at the right time has been very favorable. I'm very excited about where this team can go and the type of run that they can make.
Yeah, and so that we can wrap up with Herbert in the offense here. And, we don't need to, you mentioned the stats at the beginning, a lot of positives, really fine out. I mean, before this game, Jamal, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and goodness gracious, Josh Palmer, there we go, had played 15 snaps together when all 3 of them were on the field, 15 snaps. So finally seeing them together, you could see some different things this could do. And there could still be some rhythm off because the 3 haven't really played outside of 15 snaps. So, I mean, that's still a kind of work in progress in a way, but we saw some exciting things. But before we get into more of it, to me, Jamal, what I was most excited about with this offense and most, looking to the future, where I think this was that seminal moment. We talked about defense, but on offense too. And you've talked about it more than me in terms of leadership. And we've never said that Herbert's not a leader. His team love him. He's a great guy, integrity. He is a leader, but he hadn't flipped that next switch yet. This was the first game I can remember. And I tweeted it out, and a lot of people confirmed it. It's funny what tweets get popular and what don't. But this was the first game I can remember where I've seen that much emotion showed from Herbert in his entire career. There was the one play against the Raiders, whatever it was in 2020, I was in, where everyone got that soundbite. But outside of that, like, he's a very cool, calm guy. Like, he makes a mistake. You can see he's upset, but he goes off, kind of sits down, looks at the tape, touchdown, little fist pump, goes off. But this is the first game where we see him run for a first down, give a big, first down motion, pointing at Keenan Allen, jumping up and down, celebrating every big play they made, celebrating the defense. And I know it doesn't seem like that big of a deal to maybe just some out there, but I think, I won't speak for you, but I think based on our conversations, that was kind of the next step we wanted to see, which is so odd because that doesn't necessarily, rah cheering doesn't make you a leader, but it was that missing piece of this Justin Herbert, whatever you want to call it, like greatness, was that infusion of passion that we know he has. I'm not saying he wasn't passionate about the game, but we just never saw it come outwardly. And last night we saw it showing 2 things. One, how important this game was to them. And obviously all the noise outside and the him versus Tua and this offense, can't cut it. Is Herbert a leader? Is he not there yet? Is this coaching staff on the chopping block? So it showed that they had heard enough of that, but also him saying, like, you know what? Like, okay, if it's going to fall on me to do this, I'm going to show that I can do this. And, that last drive, I know it ended with just 3 points. They weren't able to punch it in, but he had some key throws in that drive, had a key third down run in that drive, was emotional throughout it. And that 3 points is what catapulted them to be a 2-possession game, which essentially ended the game right there because then they just ran out of time. The Dolphins did, and they didn't get the onside kick later on. So that was that closeout drive. We had been talking about seeing the eliteness, and then that passion and emotion is what we had been wanting to see. And that, I think, like we've been talking about this entire podcast, the defense showed out, but that was that next step in the Justin Herbert maturation process. And now that's why, with everyone coming back, this team can really be dangerous.
No, couldn't agree with you more, Ryan. And we wanted to see it. I still don't know if he's completely there yet. I think it's a first step to that journey of completely taking over and galvanizing this team in terms of just having their just awe and just their ear in every sense of the word. But that was very important to see him demonstrate that emotion. You want to see that passion. You want to see him care. Famously, we see Brady and Rodgers and Mahomes now show so much emotion. Even Josh Allen in that loss to the Vikings, slamming his helmet. So wanting to see that next level where Herbert really has taken on that ownership of, hey, I am the face of this team and I own that, I think was a huge first step last night to be able to see that. And I think, again, the chess pieces are falling into place, which is why we were so excited about this team in the offseason, Ryan. And we're starting to get those ingredients of why we were so excited. And it's coming together at the perfect time and in the perfect circumstance. So let's hope they can build on this. You and I have sort of talked about in other shows what would be a very Raiders thing to do following up some victories. It would be a very Chargers thing to now go and lay an egg against the Titans. So that's the last thing I want to see. Yeah. They've built all of this momentum now. They've done all of the right things now. I want to see them string this together. I'd love to see 4 in a row going into the playoffs, healthy, motivated, understanding their identities, understanding their roles. And my God, is there a more dangerous team in the AFC than a Chargers team coming off of 5 straight victories with Justin Herbert and having to face that team in the first round? If you're a Bills, if you're a Chiefs, if you're a Bengals, I mean, there's just no more a scary proposition in the entire NFL than that, and can't wait to see it play out.
Yeah, absolutely. So last thing we'll touch on, just because it's always a trending topic every game. Like, no one's ever happy. Like, what do you think of the play calling overall? I mean, I didn't really have a big problem with it. If I'm going to be critical, so me and you had talked about it a ton, Jamal, but I had Dan Wolkenstein on while you were out of town, and so obviously haven't talked to him a ton, but I've emphasized, like I always do, like you got to run the football. You got to force the defense to be physical. You got to wear them down with that. And so if I was critical of one thing, it was that, only, 19 rushes, right? Yeah, 19 rushes outside of Herbert's 4. I never count the QB rushes. So 19 rushes between Austin Ekeler and Joshua Kelley. And where my problem with that is that we saw how potent it can be later on in the game. So if you remember, Jamal, it was tough sledding in that run game. I mean, Christian Wilkins, that defensive line was just eating up Ekeler at the line of scrimmage or behind it. So I get the efficiency early on was bad. And so a lot of people are like, all right, we just got to sling it now. But then you see later in the game on that final drive, they really committed to it in a sense. And it kind of actually shifted the defense up. It made them second guess. They ran a wildcat play with Kelley and Ekeler, which I thought was amazing. Like, haven't seen that once. I don't even know if Eckler's ever taken a direct snap, but they had that. They had a Herbert. I don't think it was a designed run, but he saw it so quickly, the opening, that he just took off with it. And they had multiple runs from Ekeler and Kelley also throughout the drive. And we saw a few where Ekeler escaped in between the tackles and went for 8, 9, 10 yards because A, you were wearing the defense down, and B, it was like, okay, they couldn't just plan on it being a pass every play. So if I'm being critical at all, that would be my one critique, is that I wish I would have seen that more throughout the game because it wears the defense down. That's the power of the run game. As we've said, it forces the defense to be physical. It forces them to tackle. And I've always said 25 carries should be the minimum. That's going to give you a good chance to win. Obviously, if you're down 21-0, that changes things. But unless you're more than that or that and above, I think you got to have it some aspect of your game plan. And so that would be our one critique, is they, outside of that last drive, I think they had like 10 total carries and they had 4 in that last drive. So other than that, though, I didn't have a problem with it. I know a lot of people were hating on that 4th down call at the goal line with kind of the swing pass to Carter. It wasn't probably the best call, but had he not tripped up, I thought he would have beat his man and been in. So I don't think it was like terrible. It was just, again, an execution thing. But your thoughts overall on kind of the game plan and play calling?
Yeah, Ryan, what's interesting here, and I think that, this may constitute a hot take or not, but I think we're sort of at the end of Austin Ekeler's prime as a legitimate running back. And I think that that's getting lost a lot in the conversation with Lombardi. If you look at his yards per carry this year, he has had just an incredibly difficult time crossing 4 yards per carry in any game, and really north of 3.5. I think he is still an elite receiver out of the backfield, and I think that's his game. But I actually think that the days of Austin Ekeler being an above average pure running back out of the backfield, I think they're over. And I think that's kind of the challenge that Lombardi is facing as well. Do you go more Josh Kelley if you want to run the ball? Or do you just need to be more selective in running the football when you really need it? And then how much are you using that short passing game as a proxy for running the ball? But I think those are some of the challenges. I completely agree with you. You want to see a little bit more balance, but the 51 attempts from Herbert versus only in the low 20s and the high teens in terms of truly running the ball, you never want to see that discrepancy. And I think that the challenge is going to be for this Chargers team in the playoffs. Can they really hold up with that balance against elite competition? But I want to come to Lombardi's aid a little bit here in that I think he's got a unique challenge of how do I give the illusion of balance if I don't have a winning horse? And I don't think Ekeler is an elite running back, pure running back in this league anymore. And I think that I think Austin Ekeler is going to have less than 500-yard rushing games from now until the rest of his career. I just don't see him. I don't see the tread anymore. And he doesn't have as sharp cuts. He doesn't break the way he used to. Everything is a slog for him now. And so you either have to go Kelley eventually as RB1 as early as beginning of next year or in this playoffs, or you have to be very selective when you go hard in terms of running the football, in terms of situationally, or you have to really treat that short passing game. Again, Ekeler was 8 for 59 out of the backfield. Most of those are sort of glorified run plays. And you always have the Dairud metric of, hey, I can't count the Herbert runs as run plays, but we may need to start having to count these Ekeler pass plays as glorified run plays as a way of showing that balance. So for me, I think that's a little bit of the challenge moving forward with this Chargers team, because now you've got Allen, you've got Mike Williams, you've got Palmer, you've got Everett, you've got what you need on the outside. I think now in terms of this, we have to sort of rethink how we define the Chargers running game moving forward this year. But I think that's some of the challenges that Lombardi is facing.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's totally fair. And, if I'm being honest, and I love Austin Ekeler, love his story, we've met him, great dude. So if you're listening, Austin, I'm not trying to talk ish here, but I mean, just based on body type, size, the wear and tear of the NFL, I don't think he ever should have been the quote unquote lead back. He's the most potent when he can be your change of pace, your third down, your pass catching back. He definitely has the strength to have some of those carries in the middle, but he shouldn't be getting by himself 20 carries in the middle. That's why they drafted Isaiah Spiller, who's a big back out of Texas A&M. That's why they have Joshua Kelley, who's a bigger back and did that his entire collegiate career at UCLA. So whether that's a critique on Lombardi, a critique on, usage from the coaching staff, whether it's a critique on just inherent game plan week over week of who they're going to utilize or neutralize or whatever, I think it all comes full circle, because I agree with you. I don't think they are going to win by having Ekeler run the ball 20 times. I just think they need to run the ball with anyone 25 times, but I think they should be doing, and we talked about it in our I can't remember if I said it with Dan or in our previous show I did with you, but running back, you need to get ahead of steam and need some consistency there. And giving Josh Kelley only 4 carries and he ended up getting a 7.2 yard per average clip, why not give him 10 carries? You can get a little more consistency there. 4 carries is not going to be enough. And so why not have Ekeler get 8 to 10, Kelley get 8 to 10, Spiller get 4 to 5. Then you hit that 25. You're spreading out. You're not wearing down Ekeler. You're also keeping the defense on their toes. So there's a number of ways that they can do that, which I think is important, especially if this team is going to make a run down the stretch. All the good things we said during the show are all true. We all believe them. But as great as Herbert is, he can't be throwing the ball 51 times come playoff time if they want to beat some of these teams. Granted, if they're in a shootout with Kansas City or Buffalo, that changes things. But if it's a back and forth game, or like this game where they were winning the entire time, you need to have some semblance of a run game, or at least a admonishment to commit to it a little bit. So would love to see that a little bit more. And looks like, go ahead. Looks like you wanted to jump in right on that point.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that's the one critique there, right? For a game in which this team absolutely dominated, when they more than doubled the total yards over the course of this game, and Miami literally had 2 offensive plays the whole game, one by true fluke and the other by, you mentioned kind of a little bit of the slip. For the fact that this was still a 1-possession game midway through the fourth quarter, and the Chargers needed that field goal to salt it away. And if the Herbert fumbled snap goes to Miami, or the onside kick was a little bit of a shaky recovery, if that goes to Miami, all of a sudden now Miami has the ball with a chance to steal the game at the very end on the road in a game that they should have lost by 20. So I think that's, if we're going to really nitpick here, it's the play calling has to be in a way where you can salt these games away and really seize control not only of these games from a yards and a plays and a time of possession perspective, but you can finish these drives with touchdowns efficiently. And I think you can only do that by having true balance and not really having these short throws as a proxy for the running game. And the way you have true balance is Kelley gets 8 carries, Spiller gets 8 carries, Ekeler gets 8 carries, and then you can do a bunch of different things. So I think that's probably that final evolution, I think, of this offense. We may see it this year, we may not, but I think that's the last piece that I would love to see, because I'd love to start seeing the Chargers, when they win these games, start winning these games. 30. Last night felt like a 31-13 kind of win, Ryan, not really a 23-17. Let's hold on for dear life at the end. Mm-hmm. So that would be my one critique moving forward. But again, so much to be excited about. But I think it'll come down to that balance. Let's not have Herbert throw 50+ times every game. Can we get a victory where he's under 35 attempts and we can really win the game significantly?
Yeah, and last point on that, just because it's always the easy comparison, but when you look at those Sean Payton, Joe Lombardi, New Orleans Saints team back in those days, they drafted Alvin Kamara to be this kind of Swiss Army knife and how great he was, but up until these past few years, he wasn't the lead back. Mark Ingram was the battering ram lead back. And the Chargers have that right now with either Isaiah Spiller or Joshua Kelley. And so I think when they implore that to execute some of these smash mouth styles, and then you have Ekeler, who can be your Alvin Kamara, that can be your Swiss Army knife styles, and then that's just going to open things up for Herbert in the passing game. I just think that's where this offense needs to get, because we saw some really good things last night. We saw some amazing stuff from Justin Herbert. I thought we saw some good play calling overall, but that was my thing. I hate when, and I could be wrong on this, I could be flat out wrong, but everyone loves to critique all the specific route runnings. Like, oh, they're doing too many flag routes, too many stick routes. They don't have enough deep guys going this. I mean, you watch, yes, there's definitely ways to be creative to get guys open, but you watch 85% of offenses, it's a receiver beating his man. I mean, How many times we see a guy run a simple 5-yard out route, beats his man, and ends up getting a 12-yard gain. So yes, there's different ways, but for me, it's because you're either cheating in, cheating out, you're off your toes because of the balance of the game. And so that's where we need to see the growth of this offense is in that run game, which, we've been saying all season. So let's see.
And Ryan, you mentioned it here a little bit, and I know it's an unrelated team. You mentioned slightly about the Chiefs being a little bit vulnerable after that Broncos game. I think the Chiefs suffered the same problem that the Chargers did, was not willing to sort of commit to the run and salt the game away. I mean, up 27-0, they should have been running the ball, not having Mahomes back there chucking it all over the yard. And credit the Broncos. They made some exceptional interceptions in that game. I mean, those were not exactly just in the breadbasket. I mean, Patrick Surtain, that was a magician's trick in terms of that interception. The first interception by the linebacker going behind his body. It's not like Mahomes was kind of giving these guys balls to take. They really seized those interceptions to get back into this game. But if the Chiefs invoked a little bit more balance with the run game, that's probably a 45-10 final. And so I think that, I think all teams right now, all the contending teams really need to understand there is still so much value in that run game to be able to even protect leads. And protect your dominance over the course of the game. We talk so much about emphasizing kind of taking control of the line of scrimmage, taking control of a game. but the run game allows you to maintain control as well. And we saw that time and again across the NFL yesterday.
Yeah. And I hate the narrative that if you run with the lead, you're taking the foot off the gas. Now, if you're being dumb and going 3 and out 4 straight times because you're running 3 straight times, then that's a different story. But the run game is not taking the foot off the gas if you're using it correctly and employing it correctly and executing correctly. So I say, as soon as people, now we took the foot off the gas because we ran the football. It's like, no. I mean, again, if you did it 6 times in a row and got 1 first down total, then that's taking the foot off the gas. But if you're using it correctly,
not balance anymore. All we're saying is you have to maintain balance over the course of a game. And fundamentally, by definition, having balance means you have to run almost as much as you throw to keep a defense, off their heels, and off balance and on their heels. And so I think that's really the key point we're emphasizing here. Too much of one thing makes you very, very predictable.
Exactly. So a lot of good things. Great win, 23-17, excuse me. Poor Emmanuel Acho is probably hiding in a cave. He's getting drugged through the mud. He owned it. He, even tweeted himself in like a clown costume. So at least he owned it. A lot of people are having fun with that and that. So it's good to see. And, Chargers get the win, move to 7-6 and have everything in front of them, control their own destiny. I know, obviously, depending on tonight's game, I think if the Pats win, they're technically take the 7th spot, but I still think the Chargers control their own destiny as long as they either win out or only lose 1. I think they'll be good. But anyway, that's farther down the line. Let's wrap this up, put a bow on it. Great win. Enjoy this win, Chargers fans. Join our community. We haven't promoted in a while, but text BOLTS, BOLTS, to the phone number 31032. We do giveaways. It's kind of our exclusive community where we do announcements, exclusive content, yada, yada, yada. So bolts to 31032. We'd love to chat with you guys there. Like and subscribe wherever you listen to the show. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. At LAFB Network is the main handle. At LAFB Jams is Jamal's. I am at Ryan Dyrud, LAFB. Everyone have a fantastic week. We'll join you again later in the week to preview the Titans game. For Jamal Madney, I'm Ryan Dyrud. Everyone be safe. Talk to you all soon.